Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Ready?
Yep. Let's go. Let's laugh. We are imperfect after all.
Okay. Hello and welcome to the Imperfect Us podcast. I'm Leanne Camilleri.
And I'm Lisa Downs.
As co-hosts of the Imperfect Us podcast, we will share relatable stories that celebrate that we are perfectly imperfect humans leading perfectly imperfect lives.
We will be sharing these stories through open and honest conversations with our extraordinary guests. And together we'll discover practical and evidence-based strategies that will enable us to navigate the constant challenges and changes of everyday life. We are thrilled to share these conversations as we draw on the science of wellbeing and positive psychology, and we uncover the barriers that might hold us back from being our authentic selves and turn them into opportunities so that we can show up more consistently, doing what we really aspire to do and who we want to be.
We would like to acknowledge the Wadawurrung and Kaurna people who are the traditional custodians of the beautiful lands on which this podcast is being recorded. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and extend this respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples from other communities who are here with us today. So let's get started.
Yay! And recording. Hello and welcome. It is a pleasure to introduce today's guest, Dr. Paige Williams. Paige is an executive mentor, keynote speaker, researcher, and author. She uses a blend of science in her lived experience to help leaders thrive in a dynamic, complex, and uncertain environment in which they operate. Paige has worked with thousands of leaders across all sectors. Paige's first book, Becoming Antifragile, Learning to Thrive Through Disruption, Challenge and Change, was published in 2020. And her second book, Own It, Honoring and Amplifying Accountability, will be available in March. Paige also lives on the surf coast of Victoria in Australia, and in her spare time, she enjoys F45 training, mountain biking, and surfing with her teenage daughters. Let's dive into today's conversation with Paige Williams. All right, are you ready? Beautiful. Well, Paige, welcome. We are so thrilled to have you today. We're just wondering, we would love to hear a little bit about what led you to the work that you have been doing right now.
Oh, so there's I was born in, no, let's not go back that far.
Not that far back.
So where shall we begin? So let's start in the early 2000s, because that was my first foray with positive psychology, and I was working at Geelong Grammar School, and I was part of the small team that brought in positive psychology there, which really was kind of the first large-scale application of positive psychology in Australia. And so that fired up for me an interest in the wellbeing sciences and also systems thinking. And that's what led to my PhD research. And so my interest is around systems of well-being. How do we create those? But particularly for me through the lens of leadership, because I believe that leadership is the most pivotal and potent leverage point that we have in any system. And whether that system is a school or an organization or a family or a friendship group, how we show up and how we lead ourselves and others is one of the most, as I say, powerful leverage points that we have to create change, particularly around well-being, around things like values, around how we see the world and how we show up in the world. So that's then led to my PhD research. I worked at Geelong Grammar School as I collected data there. And then as I left Geelong, I was also building my own practice. And now, after teaching and researching at Melbourne University for the Centre for Wellbeing Science, and also now as part of Melbourne Business School, I have my own practice. And my focus now is very much on senior leadership. And how is it that we can help leaders feel well, do well, lead well as a fulcrum for change in any system. And I've chosen the space to play in being organisations. And so I am really passionate about helping leaders be better. And I use that term really generally, because what each leader needs to be better in terms of their own leading themselves and leading their teams and leading their organisation is different. And so for some, it might mean kind of doing less. For some, it might mean really reconnecting with their values. For some, it might mean dialing up accountability for themselves and others. So it gives me a beautiful big playing field to play in, but ultimately I'm about leaders at the most senior level leading themselves, their people and their organizations better.
And that's such valuable information and resources coming through you to be able to, for those leaders. I know myself as a leader a while ago, I wish I had have had that opportunity, because, you know, I led on the spot, and I'm not unlike any other leaders that are just starting out. But to have people in there that where you can talk about leadership and perhaps a way of being a better leader, reaching out to other people just a little bit more differently than the old models.
And that's right. And as you speak to, Lisa, we're here to talk about perhaps, times where we haven't felt that we are living into what's being asked of us, when we've got that kind of gap between who we feel we are and what the role is we're being asked of us, and we feel an imposter in that. Those early stages of leadership, or each time you lead up, each time that there's a stepping up to a different form of leadership or a bigger scale of leadership, that's when that little voice inside your head can be going, really? You really think you got this? Yes. Really? Did they believe that stuff you wrote on your CV? Oh my God, now you've got to do it. Oh my God. And to have someone with whom that can reflect back to you without all of those biases that we have when we look at ourselves in the mirror, or that really kind of harsh critic voice that we can have when we judge ourselves. To have someone alongside you in that, asking you the really strategic questions so that you get to the really important, powerful work about who you want to be as a leader, how you want to show up. And that's what can help kind of bridge that gap between who you think you are and how you are able to show up in the world and the difference you can make in your leadership.
Yeah, absolutely.
And as leaders in organizations, as we are sort of moving in different areas of, where we choose or find ourselves being led towards, those times where we are sort of moving into that space is the time where those discomforts are coming in, the self-doubt and self-sabotage even, because, I'm not going to say anything because what if it's the wrong thing?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And, that's where the work of Carol Dweck, and I know that this is such a foundational piece, but that idea of actually taking the risk and speaking into the space and not staying small and playing safe and having that fixed mindset of not wanting to take the risk for fear of looking stupid. The research tells us that kind of fixed mindset is actually what limits our growth and our development, because we don't take the risk, because we listen to the voice in our heads that says, yeah, but what if? And because we listen to that, we don't raise our hand, we don't ask the question. And by doing that, we stifle our own growth and development. So yeah, you're absolutely right.
And we miss all of those opportunities, don't we? That, could have been there if we just had a go. And, you don't have to get it right. In actual fact, failing is a good thing for you to do that, to learn something else. But then having that opportunity to continue to grow. And you might surprise yourself like we have been.
Paige, on that little voice inside our head, we are really curious to know, has there been a time for you where you've experienced that negative inner critic or, imposter syndrome telling you that you're not good enough or, you can't do something?
Oh my gosh, yeah, so often, so often. So, let me give you some wide-ranging examples. So, a funny example: when I was pregnant with my first daughter, I was convinced I was having a boy. Right, so we went along to the first scan, found out it was a girl, and immediately I was like, well, I'm not fit to be a mother if I don't even know what gender of child I'm carrying in my own body. And really, like, I beat myself up for weeks about my fitness to be a mother because I hadn't guessed the gender from kind of somehow feeling the juju in my body about what child I was carrying. Right, so there's one example. And I think for females, we often say, babies don't come with an operating manual. And even if they did, the second child and the third and the fourth would need a completely different operating manual anyway. But certainly becoming a mother, I was, that's one of the times where that second guessing, was I doing it right? You know, should I let the baby cry? Shouldn't I let them cry? You know, what was the right way? What the right food, the right formula, the right amount of breastfeeding, the when to wean, when not, you know, all of that stuff. So I think certainly for females, but also parents as a whole, you know, if there's ever a time, I think that's probably the thing I've second guessed myself most around, is those early years of, certainly with my first child, Liv, who's now 17. So clearly we got some things right because she's made it this far. You know, I think that's
congratulations.
She feels the same. You know, there was a lot of second guessing around that. When I got my PhD, when I received that, I couldn't bring myself to call myself Dr. Paige Williams for about 6 to 8 months.
Wow.
And that was just the gap between, okay, I've got the piece of paper, or I've got the, I might not have had been to the graduation ceremony or something, but, you know, you get the acknowledgement and the notice that you've passed. And I couldn't, I didn't change anything. I didn't put it anywhere. I was almost slightly embarrassed. Not embarrassed of the achievement, but if I put it out there, then someone might ask me about it, and would I be able to talk about it eloquently enough, and would it be, you know, enough, look, I'm PhD, and so I just didn't, and so I kind of hid it away until I'd eased into it, until I felt kind of comfortable stepping into that space. So certainly, you know, there are two kind of quite big examples from my life, but then each time I, you know, walk into a new set of senior leaders, CEO mentoring session, I kind of go, okay, all right, big deep breath, you know, you've got this. And it is just that kind of, no, come on, it's stepping into the experience, the expertise, and the trust of yourself. That if you are present, if you are holding space with the right intention, then everything that needs to come forward in that moment, for it to be the teaching or the reflection or the question that needs to be asked, you have to trust that will come forward. And so that's something that I've kind of really learned to do, is once I've done my prep, then to let it go, and to be absolutely in the room with the people that I'm working with, and let whatever comes forward for me to be a channel for that. And I found that's been the most effective thing for me in stepping out of that kind of judgment and critical and imposter voice, is to actually just be completely present and in service of the people, in service to the people that I'm working with.
Oh, I'm so glad you raised that, because we spoke to Dr. Craig Hassad, and he was talking a lot about that, and it was such a beautiful moment for Leanne and I to go, yes, it's about that service to others. And so it gets you across that line when you're trying to have that inner coach trying to help and support you and have compassion. But when you're able to realize that, yes, you have got the confidence, you know your stuff, you don't have to be the expert, but you're an expert in that, and to share it. And how do we be present enough to show that, and to be respectful to the people we're serving about sharing that information? So I'm so pleased that you brought that up.
It makes so much sense when we are in our own head, and, you know, do I sound right? What if I say something wrong? You know, we can really get caught up in that, can't we? And that can be self-limiting in itself, you know, because
especially when we let it continue to have that conversation with us, that's really not serving us in any way.
It just takes us over, doesn't it?
It does. It absolutely does. And so this is the thing, is that actually when we're so tuned into that voice, we're actually looking inward, right? And I think for many of us, we would say, are you self-centered? Are you focused on yourself? And we would go, no, that's not why I do my work. I'm here to help others. And yet when we are tuned into that self-limiting voice, or that self-sabotage, or that critic, that's exactly what we're doing. We're taking all our beautiful energy and possibility, and we're going, what am I saying about myself? And we're letting that be the loudest voice, rather than being outwardly focused and going, how can I be here in service and to help the people that I'm with in the room? And if we do that, and we're actually focusing our energy outwardly, then that voice isn't even there. We don't have to even try to turn it down, because it's just not present.
So beautiful. Paige, we're a little bit curious to learn a little bit more about your new book that's out in March. Are you able to share some of those, a little bit of sneak peek perhaps?
Yes, I'd love to. So it's just in the final process of production now. It's called Own It, Honoring and Amplifying Accountability. And it's kind of a real passion project for me. So I've realized as I've gone about my work over the years, and I'm sure that you ladies have seen this as well, is that we put a kind of our hearts and our soul and our effort into helping people perhaps see new ways of seeing themselves, of seeing ways to support themselves and others to thrive. But what has been disappointing to me is when I might circle back with clients or come back 6 months later in a conversation, and I realise quite how much has kind of just ebbed away over that period of time. So we start off these things with high energy and high motivation, and yes, we're going to be really committed to whatever the work is. But without the right processes, without the right mindsets and systems, without us actually deliberately going, how am I going to be calling myself and others to account on this, then nothing sticks. It's like flushing water through an open door. And I deeply believe that there's a strong piece around honour and integrity connected to this, that we need to reconnect with the idea of accountability, because I think that accountability has become something that we use as a stick. It's something where, if someone says to you, okay, we're going to have an accountability conversation, oh my gosh, most of us are running the other direction, right?
Yes, especially me.
Yeah, right. And it sounds scary. It sounds like you're going to be put under the spotlight. It sounds like you might have your thumbs twisted, and basically we've got this understanding of accountability as being about naming and blaming and shaming. And yet actually, if we reconnect to it through from a place of honor and love, and I write this in the book, I believe that accountability is an act of love, because accountability says, I see the greatness in you. I see the possibility. I'm asking you to play a bigger game. And if we do it right, we don't hold people to account. We don't kind of pin them up against the wall and hold them to account. We call them to account. And we do that from a place of love and possibility. And the first people that we do that with is ourselves. And I think that's a really important connection point to what we've been talking about so far in terms of, imposter syndrome, judgment and criticism of ourselves, is to be really aware of what's the piece that we need to own around maybe what our self-limiting thought patterns are, our self-limiting behaviors are, before we start saying we're being held back by that person in this situation and that. Hang on. What's yours to own in this first? How are you limiting yourself through that judgment and criticism and playing small that we've already talked to?
That's interesting, because we have been, that's been a lot of our conversations prior to starting the podcast. And I remember Leanne once saying something to me a bit like your PhD, where you didn't really want to put the doctor in front. And Leanne asked this one question, and it blew my mind, really. And she said, why is it that you don't share those accomplishments? And it was like that moment of, I don't know, and I need to work on that really, really quickly. So that's what we've been sort of filtering through. And that whole process of, I don't know if I'm actually making sense with the accountability, but I feel like it was probably my accountability to myself to know that I should have been able to achieve those things.
Exactly right. We start with adopting an accountability mindset. And we've got to do, before we can ask others to show up in their accountability, we have to have that mindset on ourselves. So what's ours to own in this situation? What can we do to make a contribution? What action can we take to move this forward? And as I've kind of shared this work in organisations and teams, one of the things that people go, oh yeah, I said, so maybe your owning it piece in this is to have a conversation to say, this really isn't possible for me to do in the timeline that you've given me. right? And it's actually you're owning it. The bit that you need to own in this is the fact that what's being asked of you is not realistic. And your accountability to yourself is not to just suffer in silence. It's actually to have a conversation in the right way with the right person. Now, can you guarantee that it's going to be received in the right way by that person? No, you can't. Right? So the boundaries to our own it need to be really clear. But what you can do to show up in your accountability to yourself and own your part in this is to flag that and to say, okay, this is what you're asking of me is actually not possible. And so can we talk about how we're going to prioritize all of these things that are being asked of me? That's the most common scenario I've come across in teams and organizations.
What comes to me, what I think about immediately, and I'm sorry, I don't have a better way of putting it, but I think of standing in your light. You know, if I stand in my light, that means I'm having a different relationship with myself. Yes. I'm having that, you know, I'm understanding my limits. I'm understanding how I tick and how I show up.
And that's why it's about honor, right? Because it's about honoring yourself, honoring your boundaries, and then showing up in honor for others. And what that means is absolutely contributing everything you have to contribute and doing the best that you can, and absolutely honoring what is not feasible or possible for you to do, and being clear about communicating that with the right people. Because that's honor. Honor is as much putting a hand up and going, hey, not possible. What you're asking of me, not possible in this time frame, in this whatever, with these resources. That in itself is honor, because that way no one is second guessing. No one's caught short. No one's going, what the? You had no idea you weren't going to be able to deliver that. Yeah. And you know, and so it's this kind of cleanness and clarity and honoring of yourself and honoring of others. That helps us. The metaphor I use is sometimes I go into teams, it's like there's this whole bowl of spaghetti that we've got to untangle around accountability and honoring and integrity and clear communication and setting boundaries, and own it talks about it at the individual, the team, and the cultural level. And helps provide frameworks for coaching for accountability. But super clear, starts with us.
I was just thinking of the ripple effect that goes through there, though, isn't it? Like if you're actually owning and having that accountability mindset, and you're saying to people, "I can't get this done now; it's unreasonable at the moment," then someone else is probably thinking, "Oh, thank God, because I'm actually feeling exactly the same." So then we're sharing a language with someone to be able to also have a bit more of an accountability mindset.
Absolutely, and what we're able to do then is to sit down in partnership. Okay, and talk about, okay, so what does realistic look like? What now? Okay, let's reconnect. What are we looking to achieve here? You know, what have we done so far? What is realistic then in terms of next steps? What's realistic in terms of, you know, timeframes? Who else might be available to support? And so what we do is by honoring and owning what's ours to own, we can then invite a conversation around what might others need to own in this. Right? Is it that we're getting unrealistic deadlines? Is it that we're not getting enough resources? Is it that, you know, whatever? And so then we move from our individual owning it mindset into the coaching conversations, whereby as an accountee or an accountor, we're actually getting super clear about what's being asked here, what's realistic in terms of what can be delivered, and how are we going to go about doing that. And there's a beautiful simplicity to this. Yeah. Which, and kind of as I was writing, I was like, wow, the whole, this is not rocket science comes to mind. And it isn't, but it's so rarely done well in organizations. So I kind of feel like I'm producing an ABC of, but it's kind of what I see is most needed. And I think it's one of those things that once it's in place, it creates trust, psychological safety, all these beautiful things that we know just ignite performance, ignite deep, meaningful relationships, ignite people's motivation and connection to meaning and purpose. So, you know, for me, it's like, well, if we get the ABC right, then all of this other beautiful stuff just comes into play.
And how can we not function better when we know each other so much better as individuals, as teams, and as the organisation like that? It's a whole package, isn't it?
And we're honouring each other's as individuals too, and that you have got strengths there, and we've got to learn about you.
Yeah, and we get to have the conversations in a clean and clear way. So it stops being about me blaming you or me naming you, and it's about what's the work that we need to do here, and how are we best to organise ourselves around that in order for us all to contribute in the way that makes most sense, whether that's because of our strengths or the time we have available, or so that we get this done. And it kind of strips away the ickiness, and it helps us do that in a really clear and clean way that honours individuals and the work that we need to do together.
Oh, I love that.
Paige, when it comes to managing our imposter thoughts, how could owning it help us manage them more effectively?
Yeah, so one of the critical things is the owning it mindset, and that does ask you to step into that question of what is ours to own. And I want to pair that with one of the strategies from my first book, which is Becoming Antifragile, Learning to Thrive Through Disruption, Challenge and Change. And in the Antifragile book, I talk about how we set ourselves up for fragility when we have these expectations about the way the world should be, and then we're faced with the reality of it, and there's this gap. And so we're kind of pushing back against the reality of our world, because we go, well, it should be like this, and it should be like that, and it should be like this, and it's not. And by pouring all of that energy and emotion into that, and it's not, we actually make ourselves fragile, because we're not then mindful, we're not then able to deal with what's going on, because we're so busy resisting it. So one of the things that I talk about in the book is to actually be really mindful about what are the stories that we're telling ourselves about our expectations of the world. And the key word in that is, as you know, we've all got this internal radio that goes on constantly. And the key word to look for in the songs that are playing, or the tapes that are playing on the internal radio, is this word should. So if we look for the times that we're applying that word should to ourselves, right, that's when we go, okay, we should be doing this, we should be doing that, I should have been able to, I should have solved that, I should have got that done by. That to me is where we're getting into that really harsh, critical judgment voice. And that's where the owning it mindset can help, because the owning it mindset invites you to go, okay, what is mine to own in this? And then what is it for others to own? So that we kind of spread that should. Okay, so maybe there is some of this that is absolutely mine, but then what is there? What are the actions? What are the responsibilities that actually it's not just for me to own? And this becomes particularly true when we're perhaps working in a smaller team, in a larger organization, and there are some, it might be cultural dynamics, or there might be policies or unconscious bias or something that it's not ours to own. Okay, our thing to own is to raise the issue that we might be experiencing, and there are others in the organization whose responsibility is to respond to that from a systemic level. And so that's again been something I've seen, and I have experienced people talking to me about, in terms of, well, you know, I feel like I should be able to do something about this, or I should be taking action on this. And I'm like, really? Is that your responsibility? Or is that the responsibility of the leader or the organization as a whole? Because this is something that's so embedded in either culture or practice or unconscious bias, that actually your ownership role in this is to let someone else know. So those two things together, that kind of dial into your tape, look out for that should word, particularly when it's pointing at you. That's from Antifragile. And then pairing that with the ownership mindset then is about really critically assessing, well, hang on a minute, what is yours to own? And what do you need to invite others to own? Because it actually sits with them. It's their water to carry, not yours.
I love that, you know, their water to carry, because some of us, and I'm going to hide behind my hands when I say this.
We're all the same.
Some of us feel like we've got to carry that water for other people.
Yes.
I don't know why. It's just, I need to
Oh,
carry
I
it
think
for
we
you too.
do know why. I think there are a lot of unconscious role plays that we get put into. If we want to talk about kind of what are the dynamics that we grow up understanding are normal in a family or normal in a system. What are the classic male and female roles? If we talk about dominator dynamics, if we talk about patriarchy, right from when we're in our families at the youngest level, there are all these subconscious, less than conscious dynamics that we just see in action every single day. And what, as females, what do we generally signal to do? We carry water. Yeah. We carry other people's water. We carry our own water. We carry it on our head, on our shoulders, everywhere. And so, that's where this question around, when you hear that word should, be really kind of aware of, really? Are you sure that's the case? And that's where Kristen Neff's work around, how can you be a wise and kind friend to yourself? I often use that. If this were your best friend, what would you be telling them? And you get a complete, I'd be saying, yeah, right. Okay, that's great. More. What would you be saying? I really kind of dial into that whole beautiful energy of caring for someone else. And I go, okay, now be your own best friend. Turn everything you've just said to yourself. And you see the physical response of people kind of going, ooh.
I know.
And they can't there's a real discombobulation in that as they try and go, I've got to kind of take my own medicine for myself. Really? Okay.
And it can be transformational, can't it? If you keep doing it though, and I think once you start doing that, you become more and more aware of it when you forget, because we do, and the brain's meant to do that for us.
Yeah.
But it can be really transformational where you really spot it all the time, a bit like our strengths. Okay, Paige, well, besides your own work, do you have an app or a book, TED Talk, or words of wisdom that might be useful for our listeners today?
So I do. And I have recently discovered the beautiful work of Thich Nhat Hanh, and the book that I've just finished reading is called How to Love, which I absolutely adored. It was given to me as a gift. And it's a beautiful little book, and it's one of those books where, it's just small sections that you can read in kind of a minute or two. And there's one section called Be Beautiful, Be Yourself. And a part of that is you have to accept yourself as you are. This is a very important practice. As you practice building a home in yourself, you become more and more beautiful. And I think that speaks so beautifully to what we're talking about today, which is accepting yourself for who you are, dialing down that voice and finding beauty and a home in who you are. So, I would say that's my thought for today.
I love that. Finding home in who you are. Beautiful. Yeah. My cup is so full speaking to you. Sorry. I'm going, yes, it just all makes sense. It's just so beautiful. Paige, where is the best place for people who want to hear more about your work to find you?
So my website would be the first place to go, which is drpaigewilliams.com. And there you can find details about the book, but also any keynote speaking I do, the executive mentoring that I do, how to contact me, and there are examples of my work there too. So drpaigewilliams.com.
Oh, thank you so much.
Beautiful, thank you.
Paige, something we are asking our guests is what their current wellbeing strategy is, and if they could share that for our listeners.
Yeah.
Do you have something to share?
Yeah, I do. I would love to. So my well-being strategy is to be love. And what that means is be love for myself, be love for my clients, be love for my friends, be love for my family. And if I am ever unsure what to do, then my guiding question, my guiding heuristic is, what would love do?
Oh, I love that.
And I use that as my reference point for action, for conversation, for mindset, for energy. And I've been doing that for about 12 months now, and it's been transformational. So I highly recommend.
Oh, that's
such
beautiful.
An important strength to have too, isn't it? It just, for me, it seems to open your mind to seeing more things as well. And it's in your heart a lot stronger.
It's absolutely, it's a softening of the heart. It's an opening of compassion and empathy. And it takes you out of judgment, and it takes you out of self, and it moves you into service. And so that question, what would love do now, is a wonderful question to hold as you perhaps struggle to navigate something that's in front of you or something for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, thank you so much, Paige.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh.
My goodness, I am so in awe of how Paige presents. We had Paige in our Masters of Applied Positive Psychology at uni, and I loved her then. But today, she was just on fire. I just love her new book. I think it's amazing.
I'm excited to read that. I am so excited.
I want to make sure I get a signed copy.
And how appropriate and in alignment with, all of this, what we're, here talking about, those imposter thoughts, inner critic, how we show up, how we manage ourselves, each other in a team and as a collective, the whole systems thinking approach, to me, just makes absolute sense in changing how we manage ourselves and also others.
And I loved when she was talking about honouring yourself and putting in some boundaries, and she really talked a lot about that accountability mindset. And when we're doing that, if we're actually being accountable, it is actually an act of love to others, and that it means that you're following up on the things that you need to do, but you can also be accountable to yourself. And when you've got those inner voices saying to you that you can't do things, there's a bit of an accountability that we need to have to actually go, hang on a minute, is this actually true? Are we going to act on that, or is there another way of reframing it? I just love that. So it's, that accountability is such an act of love.
I think I need to have like a Post-it note or a T-shirt with what would love do.
Maybe just a whole billboard.
Put it up on my vision board. It just, I think taking that into perspective can change how we might approach things, that self-talk, how we relate to others. Are we
going to let it sabotage us or not? That's that thing of owning it, like own it. And stand up, like you said it actually about standing in your light, and really have a look at yourself and be mindful. Are we going to go down that road and go right down into the pity sort of city?
I liked how she talked about carrying water for others. I do it. I will take the blame for something I haven't even done. Like I will make something my fault in my mind.
I'm getting better at it though. Are you getting a little bit better at it?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I'm catching, with a mindful perspective, I'm catching out those thoughts. So I'm really, that's part of the should word
that she was saying.
Yes.
Catch the shoulds. And if you're talking about those shoulds all the time, really stop and be present and think, hang on a moment. Should I be doing this, or does it actually belong to me? Do I need to own this, or actually do I need to pass it on to the right person? Oh, I love it.
That whole self-compassion piece really, it comes up so much in our conversations, doesn't it? And the strengths, understanding our strengths. When we understand the strengths of ourselves and others, we can't help but change the way we respond and work with one another.
Got me to thinking about when we were talking to Paige actually about love, when she was saying that, her great big wellbeing skill at the moment is to be love, and that goes into all her every system she has, her family, her work, it's everywhere. And I was just thinking that sometimes the word and the strength love gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
But in actual fact,
a bit fluffy.
Yeah. Being human we have a heart, and our heart is there, and we make great decisions, and we have love in there, and we consider what our decisions are. And are we coming there with a sense of compassion and a sense of common humanity? Then surely love is there to help us and guide us into what is the right decision, and own it. And love doesn't mean you're just going to dive all over people and have a big hug all the time and get in people's faces. It's things that we do from a place of love and compassion and kindness. And what an amazing woman. It was such a pleasure. And thank you for listening to the Imperfect Us podcast. As always, we are extremely grateful for our executive producer, Brenton Ainsworth, for helping us to put this episode together, and the incredible music throughout the show.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please share it with someone you care about. And we would be grateful if you could rate this podcast on iTunes. If you know someone who has a great story to share about how to live with imposter thoughts, then please get in touch with us. To find out more about Leanne and Lisa, we welcome you to connect with us on LinkedIn and our socials. Bye for now.
Bye for now.